reset, restart. There we go. Put some time back on the clock. I wish my Celtics had a bit more time last night. That's okay. We're moving on from it. For those of you who are new to the sprint, we get in 20 minutes, talk about a ton of sales value and content that we're going to all pack together. Keep it really tight, really concise, lots of protein squished into 20 minutes so you can get in, learn a ton of value, get out, get on with your selling. Today we have a special episode where Jen Allen-Knuth is going to join us from lavender.ai. Lavender is a tool we use at Triple Session. It's a tool that I advise everybody to look at. So we'll get all the shameless plugs out of the way first here, Jen. It is amazing. I've already learned a ton from it. I invited Jen on board with us. Jen comes from a unique position where not only is she inside the machine that is teaching us all how to be better at emailing, she's also spent almost 2 decades on the front lines. I know she doesn't look it, on the front lines of selling. So she's done our job hands-on, and she's done it from the epicenter of the sales universe. If you don't know Jen's background, she spent the better part of her career working for the company that was the source of the Challenger sale. All of you here know the Challenger sale. We've known it for years. It is one of those timeless sales books that is still relevant today. We still talk about it all the time because those learnings were so great. And now Jen is with us from lavender.ai. Did I miss anything, Jen?
No, you killed it. I appreciate the compliment about not looking 2 decades into sales. That's Botox and filler for you. So thank you.
All right. Well, you started at 13, right? That counts the 1 minute extent when you're 13?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We'll put that on the clock. Let's jump right in though, because the clock has already started here. We want to get through as much as we can. Also leave some time for some Q&A. Let's go right to the heart of not just prospecting and AI's impact on it, but really where you're on the front lines with email specifically. So much is changing. There's so much going on so quickly. I feel like even 18 months ago, we weren't even talking about the stuff that we're talking about now. And having come from that career of being on the front lines when I think I heard you reference fax machines at one point.
Yes.
So you can run it back to some old school stuff here. What are some of the biggest takeaways, biggest, most recent learnings, especially for email prospecting, that we should all be attentive to, all should have our eyes on right now?
Yeah. So a lot of these, by the way, are things I screwed up as a seller. When I came to Lavender, it was a big, giant slap in the face to me because I would look back on emails I sent and realize I made almost every single one of these mistakes. So let's start with the subject. I think traditionally, most of us have been taught in the last 5 years is we have to be clever to stand out, right? And so we will try to be really eye-catching. We'll use things like 10 times ROI. We'll throw their name in there. We want them to feel like it's an N of 1. But all of these have become cues to our buyers that this is more than likely a cold email. So if your cold email is reading like a marketing email that you would get on the weekend to, like, I don't know, any store you shop at, that is actually a great cue to your customers to hit delete. So instead, what you want to think about is what we call internal camo. Think about the emails your boss sends you. If he or she wanted you to update your pipeline, they would never be like 10 times your pipeline. They would just say, update your pipeline, right? And we need to think the same way if we want people to believe that this might be an email in the inbox. So 1 to 3 words is the sweet spot. Keep it as boring as possible and just be specific to what's in the email. So that's one. Second thing is preview text. We get a lot of love for subject lines. We think so much about it. We often look at preview text, which are like your first 50 characters, as an afterthought. I put up a screenshot the other day of my inbox, and every single one of the 10 emails that were in my inbox started with some form of, I hope you're well. When I am looking at my inbox, I'm not some crazy big executive, but I'm trying to filter for what's urgent, like most of us are. And so when I see those cues, it's not that I hope you're well is a bad thing to say. It's just that it makes it sound like a cold email. So think about if someone only read your subject line and your first 50 characters of text, would that compel curiosity for them to open? Third thing is simplicity. This is my favorite one I learned because it was so counter to what I had done as a salesperson. We go to college, we're taught, hey, write like, your 500 minimum word essay and double space it and make it as long as you possibly can. And we're never taught when we come into sales that that is a horrible way to communicate with executives. And so where you really want to target is that 3rd to 5th grade reading level, meaning if you have an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, show them your email. If they don't understand it, it's a really bad sign that it's likely going to be responded to. So when you do that right, I think it's 67% increased likelihood of a reply.
It's funny you mentioned that, and it seems like it might be new information, but my mother was a journalism professor for her entire career. And she always used to say that newspapers are written at exactly that, the 6th grade reading level. For that purpose, you want to engage as wide an audience as you can, not exclude anybody, make it really fast and simple, something that people can consume really on the fly. Obvious that we should be having that, but not so obvious too, right?
Totally. I mean, if I look at cold emails I get, sometimes they are like so many big words. If you've got words like visibility in your email, change it to C, right? Nobody's getting points for using big words. So that simplicity is really key. 2 others that kind of stood out to me were tone. So obviously coming from Challenger, one of the big misinterpretations of Challenger is that you talk at your prospect and you tell them like, your baby is ugly and I'm going to be the one to tell you all about it. What we found at Lavender is when you use an informative tone, meaning you're very assumptive, you're talking at, you have this problem, you are losing to, language like that, you get 26% less replies than if you use unsure tones. So unsure tones could sound like, I don't work within your 4 walls, but I noticed this, right? So you're not assuming to know everything about your prospect. When you do that language, we actually put up a barrier between us and that buyer. And then the last one is brevity. I think one of the hardest things that I learned, I had some emails that I loved that I used to send as a salesperson that were probably 250, 300 words. The sweet spot is under 50 words. When you do that, you get 68% more replies, not because 50 is a magic number, but for 2 reasons. One, on average, a buyer will read your email for 9 seconds. That's down from 10 from last year. And 2, when you are forced to write something in only 50 words, it requires incredible clarity. And so we do not get away with fluff words, things that are unnecessary. So it's far more about the clarity it gives you than really about the word count.
Makes complete sense. And it's funny, again, we hear these things, and as a reader of emails, it seems obvious. And as a writer, we violate everything, right? And it's completely backwards, but it's almost like we are now able to see how millions of readers are looking at them. Talk a little bit about calls to action, because we're all salespeople here. This is a sales sprint.
Yeah.
We want people not only to read and love the email, but to do something, right? We have a point of interest. We want some type of action to happen from it. What do you learn about calls to action from all the data that you've been crunching back at the lab at Lavender?
Yeah. So Will Allred, one of our co-founders, came up with this term, the mental spam filter. I love this because what it essentially is, it's a coping mechanism for our readers, right? They look for cues that something would be a cold email. So when they see the words 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right back into cold email, no matter what you've got ahead of it. It's almost like they read the subject, the preview, and then they scan down to the bottom. So what we are essentially doing, if we think about the motion of cold emails, there are about 3%, right, of people that are buying in the market for what we sell. For the other 97%, we are trying to create an awareness of a problem, right, that they might not even really know that they have. So it's a little bit like going on Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or whatever dating platform you want, seeing someone's profile and then immediately asking them to marry you when you ask for the meeting up front. We actually need to just suss out, do they have the problem that we have? So we've found that softer calls to actions, meaning things like, does this resonate with you? How does this, or not resonate's a terrible word. How does this sit with you? Is this something that you see, right? Just gauging, is the problem in existence? And when you do that, the side benefit that I've seen, even since I've been adopting this more, is instead of emailing people over and over and over and over again until perpetuity and they never respond, you actually get people who opt out and they say, no, it's not. We just did this to solve for this. And then that gives us clarity so we can focus our limited time and attention on people that might have a problem, right? So I think our goal here is just to get a reply. It's not to book a meeting.
Right. And you just mentioned something there. You just dropped the word resonated and changed it. And this is an interesting point, and it leads me to something that I just learned in the last couple of weeks here as I was doing my homework for today. Not all AI is built the same way. When we talk, we can often use resonate in a conversation like this because it's so fast. Most people get it. It's okay, right? So when we use something like ChatGPT, resonate is going to be perfectly normal suggestion because it's reading this huge data set. Tell us a little bit more about some of the differences there. What are you picking up from just email, just sales AI that we can do differently?
And this is a question we get a lot, so I'm glad you raised it. There's writing in good English. Like a lot of people love Grammarly. I like Grammarly, right? It's a great tool, but Grammarly is just correcting you on appropriate English and grammar. We have to remember that a thesis statement is not going to be read by someone who's not expecting our note in their inbox. And so that's why when I talk about the stats initially, we're all looking at what we're doing at Lavender is we're looking at what increases the likelihood of a reply. That's the end game here, right? Is I want to reply, whether it's yes or no. I just want something, so I'm not hanging out there. And so we have to actually rewire, just like I did, some of these assumptions we have around if I say platform, does that make me sound more sophisticated? No, it just makes us sound less clear. Say tool. So it's looking at these little assumptions that we don't even realize we make. And you're right, you called it out. I did it in this conversation. It's almost harder to write for a sales email than it is to write for an A in English class.
Right. We do have a lot of salespeople on this call, and there's been some anxiety recently when we hear about AI and we hear about maybe jobs getting replaced. We're talking about sales AI. We've got commissions that are feeding families here. You know what that's all about. Should we have any anxiety over downsizing, streamlining, cutting back? How do you think this is all going to play out?
I think this is such a fascinating space. I wish I had like a ability to see in the future. I expect there's going to be a pendulum swing. I think
Okay.
you look at the history of sales, we have a tendency to be obsessed with the easy button. So the easy button is, hey, instead of sending 50 emails today, I can send 500. Instead of making 5 calls, I can make 50, right? And so as sales organizations, we run to easy because we think, hey, volume will solve the game. I fully expect to see people shift to saying, hey, let's forget about SDRs. Let's forget about all these marketers. Let's just put stuff in ChatGPT. And then I expect we'll see it swing right back because I think because of the volume that this enables, the volume of content, the volume of noise, the volume of outreach, it is going to become a seriously ineffective way to communicate with buyers. And being a human being is going to become a differentiator. If it isn't already, I kind of think it is already, just judging from my own inbox. But I think we'll see that pendulum swing back and forth, just like we have with sales engagement platforms and other sales tech.
Okay. Now you are cutting edge right now, working inside one of the leading AI companies. Let's get out of email a little bit or broaden it out. What other AI companies in sales do you watch that you think are really interesting, doing some cool stuff that's impacting prospecting?
Yeah, so there's 2. So one, Doug Landis over at Emergence Capital, which is a VC, he posted one the other day that I think is the perfect kind of use case for AI. It's called FinChat. FinChat, if you sell to public companies, will allow you for about like 800 companies or so to ask questions like you would ChatGPT, but be able to ask them about the company's like current priorities and things like that. So it basically scans all of their public, documented CEO letters to shareholders, 10Ks, all of these things, and allows you to very quickly get direct answers to direct questions, which is something that ChatGPT can't because it's only going up to September 2021. So I love this use case because this is a time where efficiency actually makes sense. If I do not have to read a 50-page annual report and I can just put in a prompt, I'm all in for that, right? Because that does allow me to save time without sacrificing quality. The second one I personally get excited about is Canva. Canva has been a phenomenal tool. If we think about prospecting as more than just cold emails, cold calls, DMs, and we think about having smart things to say in the places where our buyers go to learn, half the battle there is catching attention, right? So you can say the smartest stuff in the world and have nobody read it because it doesn't stop the scroll. So I really like all of the AI advancements that Canva has made such that you can go in there and just type, I want a person sitting at a desk with a chicken sitting behind them, and it'll come up with something like that's really cool. And again, time saving in a way that doesn't sacrifice quality.
Okay. With the smart, savvy salespeople here, we're on and already know I shouldn't be spamming. I don't spam. I work hard not to spam. I personalize a lot of my communications. I go deep. I try to get middle names and kids' birthdays and all that fun stuff. What have you learned about personalization and its cousin relevance when sending email?
Yeah, I think they're distant cousins. I think one of the things that I certainly struggled with in the beginning is I would try to find these unique, really personal things. I'd throw it in the beginning in the preview text, and then I would just completely pivot in a complete opposite direction and be like, now let me tell you about our service or our solution. And I think that is by and large the mistake I see sellers making. So I am personally far more in favor of relevance being defined as, can we anticipate a point of view about their business that might make what we do relevant? And then if you have that personalization as well, which I think is kind of like the cherry on top, what we saw is if you put it at the end of your email in a PS, that and a one-to-one email, not a mass email, you do that, you get a 35% increase in your reply rate from that. So if you're like me and you like, I saw someone the other day that was volunteering at a dog shelter and I was like, I love dogs, I love shelters. Throw it at the end because then you don't have that awkward handoff from the first sentence to the second sentence.
What might that sound like, say, for lavender? What would an example be so we can really crystallize it?
Yeah. I mean, if I was writing, I would say, in the beginning, I could say something around, one of the hardest challenges SDR leaders face is they are suffering with 1 to 5% reply rates. Most believe that we have to send more emails, so we invest in tech. What if we were to share with you that X stat that I've shared? PS, saw that you've volunteered at, this shelter. Really love what you were doing there. So you can take just a very similar structure, like an organizational structure, and go with observation, hypothesis of problem, either proof point or data stat if you have it to validate the problem, and then leave it to them to respond. Like if I'm going to cut words anywhere, it's in my call to action. If they are interested in the problem that I've served up, they don't need to be told to reply.
Okay. So I know you're demand gen, but today we have redubbed you Jenny from the bot. And you can't tell us everything that the bot knows, obviously, but there are a few don'ts that I would love to get on the table for everyone that's attending here and anyone that's going to listen on demand. What is the don't stuff that we should be watching out for? Like the absolute, without any borders, it doesn't matter your industry, your customer, please do not put this in your email, whether it's subject line or body text. What do we need to absolutely avoid?
There's one that is the culprit by and large, and that is I, we, our. So in Lavender, this, like it counts your I's versus yours, in any language related to them versus you. It is so easy when you're sending a cold email to talk a lot about yourself. If you haven't given someone a reason to care, it is a great way to hit delete. And I always think of it like, imagine you walk into a cocktail party. Who do you gravitate to? You don't gravitate to the people that are so self-involved and just constantly talk about themselves. It is no different in the inbox. You still have to show up like a human being, express interest in that other person if you want it to be a two-way conversation. So I would say that by and large is like number one by a landslide.
Okay. ROI? What about that phrase?
My thoughts on ROI. Everybody's got ROI. ROI is like assholes. We've all got them. Like everybody loves to talk about them. And it's become meaningless noise. I'm not saying that there's not a time and place for it, but in an upfront motion, you don't see emails that don't talk about 10 times, 5 to 15 times ROI. Just by virtue of removing it makes you sound different.
Yeah. Okay. So goes by real fast here. We're just about at the buzzer. Any final thoughts here that we should all take away in the last minute that we have to really make sure we pull home?
I think just revisit your assumptions. Like I talked about when I joined Lavender, it was a really humbling experience to put some of my best emails in Lavender and get a 70. Like I've been doing sales for a long time and I scored really poorly. It's not because I'm a terrible salesperson and neither are you. It's just because these trends change and we rarely have any data to support is something working or not.
All right. So that's it. You can see at the clock, we're coming up on the 20-minute mark. It goes by fast, right, Jim?
Sorry, it took 100 miles an hour. I felt that.
That's okay. That's why we exist here at Triple Session. Good news for everyone that's listening here. We grabbed a video from Will Allred off of YouTube, talks about how to write the perfect email. We curated it, uploaded it into Triple Session, popped it on there, just got it in time prior to today's webinar. It's now live. I'll send out the link to everybody here so you can jump in. There's tons of more value from Will, co-founder of Lavender. Talks about a lot of the best practices, the do's, the don'ts, what to do, why to do it, what that mental spam filter looks like, and how to stay out of it for your prospects. This was fantastic. Thank you, Jenny from the bot. We have just 5 more minutes, not our normal 10 because of the late start. But if we have some questions here for Jen while we have her for another 5 minutes, let's jump into the chat, see who we got, see what we can catch up with here.
And just, I put this in there just as a special thank you for everybody. Our normal trial is 7 days. If you want to try Lavender for yourself, you can install it for free. You can do it for 30 days with the Lavender Love Code. So not to be too.
There you go. No,
use
we
it.
want it.
Learn
This
it.
is huge. And again, I am not getting anything from Lavender to say this. We love it. We use it. This was all just organic. It's an amazing tool. Get in there, check it out. Can't endorse it enough. If we have any questions, now's your time. We're probably going to have enough time to answer just one. So if you want Jen here to get deep into any of the stuff that she knows, there's a lot. We don't have to limit it. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, hi Matt, hi Jen, and hi everybody. I have a question. I mean, all these changes of the cold email and everything, I understand that changed a lot. I mean, as Matt said, like a couple of months, the tendency was one, now is another, totally different. So this tendencies change depending of the geography of the clients. I mean, do you see any difference between Europe clients, American clients, Latin American clients, or is there basically like a pattern, like the same?
It's a great question. So when we're looking at data, we're looking at it through 3 lenses. One is the overall data set, so about 100 million emails. 2 is for the company itself. So as a user and your company as a user, it's showing you what trends are happening with your own company. And then 3 is you as an individual. What we typically see is we revisit the data, the overarching data that I talked about once every 3 months, because we saw, for example, there was a time when you wanted 50 words, but then 60 words was actually a better answer. So email is going to constantly fluctuate and move as people jump on things, they become trends, and then those trends don't work as effectively. But we haven't noticed any major differences in Europe, Asia, any of the other global markets. It really more comes down to your company. You might have a unique way of doing something that gets you, a higher reading level or a longer word count in your email. Those are the 2 that we've seen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
All sales is human, right? Comes down to it. We're all built many ways the same way. Culture does impact it, but fundamentally, cross borders, we all read the same. We all look for the same things. Don't use the 15-cent word when the 5-cent word, right?
Yes, exactly. Clear is kind.
Very good. If you have any other questions on the subject, pop them into our Slack group, the Triple Session Community Slack. I'll be sure to get to them. And if I don't have the answer, I will be bugging Jen to get the answer later. Jen, thanks so much for the session. It was great, fantastic. It went by really
fast.
It's a sprint. You call it a sprint for a reason. So we get in, we get out, we learn a lot. Next week, everyone here, I implore you to attend next week's session with Anthony Natoli, BDR leader, came up through the ranks. You know Tony?
Yes, he's the man. That'll be a great one.
We are going to be talking about mindset to approach with the job. That is his specialty. He knows it, gets into it. He writes a ton about it. So we're going to have a lot of fun on that one, going to the bottom of the ocean with Anthony. So looking forward to see everybody next week. Thanks again, Jen, the man Jen, for joining us today. Is that a Triple Session bottle I see on the nightstand there? Is that a prop or are you actually using it?
Oh my gosh, I'm using it. I forgot. I was going to put it next to my desk, but this is my new favorite water bottle.
There you go. Triple Session, 3 sessions, three-step methodology for daily improvement. Get your sessions in. Practice makes progress. Get your reps in every day, 15 minutes a day. We'll keep the quota attainment near. So great. Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you.
Great to have you. See everybody next week.
Bye, y'all.